All right. So how's everybody doing today on this beautiful day? The 15th of
Fantastic.
February, the day after Valentine's Day. If anybody is having a sugar letdown in case they got candies or something. Um, that's always interesting. But today, going to talk a little bit about my other profession. Not just, I'm a hypnotist, psychologist, coach, whatever you want to call me. Change agent. I love that term, right? Whether you want to use cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnosis, NLP, whatever it happens to be. And that's one of my professions. But another one of my professions is acting. I'm an actor. I've been an actor since the late 70s. After I got out of the Army, I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, yada, yada, yada. It was quick story. It was the career I drank away. One of the careers I drank away. The military didn't go well because of my drinking. Then the acting was going pretty well, and I drank that away. Then I sobered up, and that led me down the path of becoming an alcohol and drug counselor, and a NLPer first, then a hypnotist, and went back to school and things like that. So, but I never, after I sort of sobered up, I stayed around theater for the next few decades doing theater, on stage. And about a few years ago, I started getting back into film. And so, and I study it. It's like anything else. It's not just an art. It's also, there's somewhat of a science to acting, right? Or at least I think there is. What separates a good actor from a bad actor. And whenever I talk about this, I'll do what a lot of people will do, is throw out the idea of a celebrity. I'm talking about acting, right? Because there's a lot of people I respect and admire. They're great celebrities. They've been in a million movies. I don't know if I would call them an actor, right? Like The Rock, Trust me, I'd say all this, and I would, sell my wife to the Arabs to be in a movie with him. But that's a different story. Tough crowd. I'm here till Thursday. But he's a celebrity, and I'm a fan of his work, if you want to say that, because but he always plays The Rock. Would everybody agree with that? There's nothing wrong with that. He always plays The Rock. I've not seen him do a character that's different than that, at least that I know of. So when I talk about actors, those actors that you believe when you see them act, right? And you just believe it. The epitome of it would be Anthony Hopkins, right? And at least in my opinion, I believed him as Thor's dad, and then I believed him as Hannibal Lecter, right? And then it's like that's a broad path there. And then he was in a one where he played a really loving, caring father. Oh, Meet Joe Black. He was the best thing in that. He was the best thing in Meet Joe Black, where he played the father. But at least to me, I'm sitting there watching, I believe him. He blends into the role. So how do people do that, right? And can we use that as hypnotists, change agents, whatever we want to call ourselves, and or business people? I'm going to slant this to becoming a better business person. Everyone here and most of the people on my group, I would say their skill sets are phenomenal, right? NLP, hypnosis, coaching, their skill sets are somewhat phenomenal. But maybe the weak part might be the business side of it, whether it's marketing or whatever it happens to be. So why not look at something outside of our world, right? And take that information and apply it to what we do. Because most of us have heard the term act as if, correct? We've heard that. Like it's big in the addiction world, act as if when you're doing, you're sober enough, whatever. We say that all the time, act as if. Great. Then nobody shows you how to act as if. If you don't know what it is, you can't act as if. If you have no courage, no conviction, no focus. Oh, just act like you do. What the hell does that mean? Right? How do you act as if? Right? Does that make sense? Right? It does to me anyway. And so, you know, when I say it to people, just act as if. Well, then now I'm starting to say, well, maybe you ought to study, you know, and then we'll throw out a term that even people in our field, I think, confuse, which is, well, then just go model somebody. You know, okay, what specifically do you model? Right? How do you do this? Right? And it's the difference between creating a new character for yourself, creating a new part of your personality, or mimicking. Right? A couple of us, maybe on this call, Billy Ajamu, can remember back a couple of decades ago where we had a whole bunch of we still have a whole bunch of Tony Robbins wannabes. And they would have the suit on, white shirt, red tie, suspenders, which is what he was when he first took off, right? And then they were mimicking, you know, I'm going to be the next Tony Robbins, right? Okay, I'd always hear that, you know, I'm going to be the Chinese Tony Robbins or whatever it happens to be. And now if we're going to back up and look at acting, actors don't want to be, they want to create a new character, even if they're basing it on an older character, right? And some can do it quite well. You know, I'm a big Star Wars and Star Trek fan, right? But when they like Star Trek, when they relaunched the thing with the new Captain Kirk, there was a lot of people all upset. And I remember the actor, who's pretty good, his name is Chris Pine, says, well, he's not going to try to be William Shatner. You know, with the William Shatner, give me more power kind of thing, right? Real Shakespearean, by the way. That's Shakespearean acting, right? And he created his own, somewhat the same. You know, he had some of the mannerisms, but it was like he created a different character. A lot funnier. He brought his own personality to the character, which is the key to all acting, right? Unless you're the Anthony Hopkins, which I'm not, you know, he kind of loses himself. But so what, you know, how can we do that, right? So let's have some fun with that. So when you think about, if you don't know about it, method acting, you know, there's somewhat of a science to it, believe it or not, as I said, or just acting in general. I was trained in the realistic school of acting at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. It was a little bit method, you know, it's the Spencer Tracy, Robert Redford, Kirk Douglas all went to that school. You know, it's about just be real in the moment. That's what they post. But they still give you a method to get there, right? A method to get there, right? And one of the things is, let's say you want to create, if you're an actor, first I'm going to talk about an actor, then I'll make it for us, is you're reading a character, you know, who am I? You know, I have an audition later and I was looking at it, you know, the guy, it's supposed to be a guy, he's an accountant, it's for a film, obviously. And it kind of gives a little bit of a character description. Doesn't give you a lot, gives you a little bit, okay? Like he's like kind of a reserved, conservative accountant, right? And he's a father of a girl. Right? It's a, I don't know what the hell it is, but it's a romantic murder mystery, I guess is what it would be called, right? So anyway, when I'm looking at it, you know, it's like, okay, they give you some name, they give you a name, right? So you'd ask yourself, who am I? Now, if you want to become good at this, and this is where we could tag it into being a hypnotist, you're going to create a new part of your personality is, let's say, a better business person, a better salesperson, right? Okay, when you're asked, who am I? You have to look at your past, right? An actor will create a past, right? Like, where did this guy go to school? When did he get married? All the things, a lot more work than you think. I was just in a play and there was, you know, and it was at I actually got paid, but it was at a community theater. And when we're getting ready to open, I had this piece of paper I taped to the mirror in the dressing room. And a couple of people looked at it and go, what's that? And I go, that's my character bio. You know, where was he born? What was his relationship with his parents? You know, what's his relationship to everything going on? What made him become what he is? What's his relationship to the people in the play? Right? Because that's creating it. So, right? So you can, you know, and then what you do, and what we can do as business people, is then you look for similarities, you know, similarities in your past, if there are any, so you can make it more yours, right? And so after you ask, you know, who am I? You know, you ask, like, you know, what's my objective? Now your objectives are going to change, you know, if you're an actor, through each scene, through the arc of the movie or the play, your objectives may change, but you have an overarching arc of what your objective is, right? So if we're going to create a new business person, if you're going to use method acting to become, let's say, a better salesperson or a better business person, you know, so, you know, what's your objective? So that, you know, is to be a better business person, right? Better at biz, right? Whatever it happens to be, sales, marketing, things like that, you know? And then you ask, you know, what are my relationships? In each interaction. Now, first, let me back up. I'm going to go through the acting part. Then I'm going to tie it into what we do, because it's hard to bounce back and forth. So as an actor, if you're taking this approach, realistic method acting, is then you ask, like, what's my relationships? Because it's going to change, you know, in the scene, in this, you know, in the play I just did, it was, what's my relationship with the person that was my campaign, my chief of staff. He was my chief of staff. I was the governor, so he was my chief of staff, right? So what was my relationship, right? And then as the new people came in, what was my relationship going to be with those people, you know? And, you know, so this can help us in a lot of different ways, because it will change, right? And so when you're creating this, you want to look at this. So, you know, what are my relationships? Because that will set the tone of how you talk to people. And it's the difference between making something real or just being kind of one note, right? And so this is how you begin to create your character, right? So you do these things. Who am I? What's the past I'm going to create for this person? And then I'll show you how we can use this. What's my objective overall, which will then break down into every scene. You know, my objective in the play I was just in was to keep being the governor. So it was a comedy where I was the lieutenant governor. The governor got caught banging some girl, so he had to quit, and his whole staff, and I get thrown in to be the governor. And I was mainly the lieutenant governor, and more of it was an accountant, good at the number stuff, bad at human interaction, right? So I had to create that past. And one of the things the director gave me a suggestion to add in was a little bit of a stutter when he tried to talk to people, right? Because his thoughts were coming too fast, and he'd be nervous about talking to especially strangers, right? So then I had to go look up, how do you stutter believably, right? So that, to me, this stuff's kind of fun, right? And so again, and my objective was to keep in the office, because I thought I could do a good job in there, right? And that was my overarching objective. So it changed the relationship with the people that were coming in, and it toned everything, right? And so that was the character I began to develop. And then you go back and develop your character by looking at your past, and what can you draw from your past? Well, the easiest one for me is I do get a little bit tongue-tied when I'm talking to someone in authority sometimes, right? I can start to get a little bit tongue-tied, or my my brain's moving faster than my lips and my mouth can keep up with, right? So since I had it in my real past, I went back and thought about it, and then I just exaggerated it a little bit, you know? And so that was how, like, you develop a character, right? So now, does this make sense to everybody, right? And then you just imagine being in the situation that you're going to be in. That's basically acting. Sometimes I'm amused how actors make like this shit's all hard. It can be a little bit time consuming, right? And then I said the other day that, I was taught the job of an actor is to audition, right? If you get to perform, that's a bonus, right? And then you do this homework, right? And your real job then is to make whatever the lines are believable. Do they believe you when you're saying the lines, right? And again, when you look at Anthony Hopkins, when he was playing the dad in Thor, you believed him. Then he kind of had a sweet relationship with his son and his wife, and a somewhat antagonistic relationship with his other son, Loki, if you're a Thor fan, right? And then when he flipped over to playing Hannibal Lecter, I thought he was very believable, right? And, he said when he did his research, he went and researched serial killers, and a lot of them are very flat affect, right? Which could get kind of boring as a performer, and it's written in the script, or it was written into the book. I never read the screenplay, but it was written into the book. The only person he had a human connection with was the FBI agent. Clarice Starling, right? Right. And that one, his voice does that make sense? His voice changed when he was in the relationship with her, And so, and how he interacted and did those things, right? And so that's the big thing, is to make it real. Now, let's tag this in to what we do, right? Especially if you want to become a better business person, a better salesperson, a better this or that, right? Marketer, right? What can you take from this, right? Well, do you need to create a new character or an aspect of your character to make it real? Do you need to do, and a few people on the call can remember who this guy is, a lot of people won't, but Cary Grant, right? Toward the end of his life, Cary Grant said one of the best things that ever happened to him was he got to play Cary Grant until he became Cary Grant. He created the character and then became that character, right? So do you need to create a different aspect of your character? Do you need to totally reshape your character? And if your character is basically your personality, it changes all the time, right? Everybody that's watching this, your characters change several times, right? It changes through time. So, but unfortunately, most of our character changes or personality changes aren't structurally done on purpose. It just happens to be we're put in a situation where your personality shifts, right? So, if we were going to change, if we were going to use this technology of like method acting or realistic acting to use for us to become better business people, salespeople, marketers, well, the first thing you have to do is think about what type of personality do you want to be? Right? What type of personality or character do you want to be? Right? So do you, and I would say one of the things I've seen, unfortunately, in our field is people that really get into marketing, they end up mimicking the people they're around a little bit too much, right? But, so do you have a couple of models that you could model, right? To create your Captain Kirk, right? Or to create your Obi-Wan, right? Which is another good example of a good actor took the part and made it a little bit different. When the new Obi-Wan took the role over, right? And began to do it. So what type of personality or character do you want? Now, if you find, and this is where we call them a role model, right? There's a good role model you want to model, then one way to ask yourself is when you're thinking about this role model is what statement or question does this person live by? Right? What statement or question does this person live by? Right? So you can begin to model whatever that is, you know. And again, you can create your own, which would be a little bit different maybe than your model, right? Because you know you're going to create your character, right? So now you have that. So then you begin to think about creating this type of business person, salesperson that's a coach or a hypnotist or a change agent that you want to be. So what you want to do is create this character in the future. So how will this, you know, if you want to be a better business person, let's say you're going to model a Tony Robbins, right? So you're going to create that future, let's say a few years into the future, right? So you got this future you that has those abilities to network, to market, and to be able to sell, you know, maybe to be able to sell without appearing to sell, right? And then think about what goals or objectives does this future you have? Right? So you've done that. So you've got that, right? And this is how you begin to create a compelling future for yourself. You know, one of the things that's going on right now, I think, in culture is there's a divide between a whole swath of the population in the Western world is of the mindset the best days are behind us. Right? They want to go back to the 50s or the 40s, whatever it happens to be, you know. It's like the best days are behind us versus are your best days in front of you. Right? So you want to begin to, you know, think about that, right? So you want a compelling future, because if you don't have a compelling future, you become past oriented. And when you become past oriented, you don't innovate, right? You don't change, you don't adapt, and you don't flow. Right? And we've got a lot of, for the business side of it, you could look at Sears, the world's largest retailer in the 1980s, that is pretty much gone now, right? Of course, we can jump over to Netflix. We're not, you know, Netflix versus Blockbuster, right? One was kind of stuck in the present, looking at the past. The other was in the present, but looking at the future. You know, Walmart came into the market and was looking at, well, people, they don't really care about, you know, Sam Walton said, you know, he noticed that people would come in his store and buy a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, that was messy. I mean, the stores they're not laid out very neatly, right? They're just kind of, they drop pallets on the floor and stuff like that, but people seem to like it, right? Now, the executives at Sears thought that was stupid, right? And for a while then Walmart started to change a little bit, and some of the stores, they started to look more like department stores in the malls, very, you know, everything's super organized. They wouldn't stock shelves during the day, right? And then they brought in a person that said, well, no, let's go back. You know, if you're going to go back, what were you doing back then that was successful? You looked busy. It was so busy, you had to stock during the day, right? And so people, you know, it brought the people in. So, you know, if you need a compelling future, right? With where do you want to be in like 5 years or 10 years, right? I was reading this book, or I was listening to it, to be honest with you, but it had to do with these what's their name? Hardy and I'll think of it. But it's easier to 10 times your business than it is to double your business. Right? That you need to think exponential growth, especially in the current world, right? Because you have access to markets literally all over the world that they didn't have a few years ago. So when you create this compelling future, they always talk about make it big, but what if you make it 10 times bigger than you could imagine, right? Because the way to test this, there's a test, and then I'll tie this into method acting again, is think about where you are right now. Just close your eyes, think about where you are right now. Your life, the relationships around you, and every aspect, right? And even with taking the COVID thing lately, but if you just think about where you are right now, right? Now, imagine 10 or 15 years ago. If you go back to the you were 10 or 15 years ago, could that you imagine who you are right now? Right? It's probably much better, because throughout human history, the trajectory for growth is always on the upstream. There'll be some blips downward, but it's always on an upswing, right? I mean, what is it? Technology doubles now every 6 months, something like that, right? Used to be every few years. Now or at one point it was decades. Now it's into the months that, technology will double. So if you test it, right? So usually, I think it was, and I hate to quote him, I think it was Bill Gates that says, most people overestimate what they can accomplish in 6 months to a year, but underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade. Right? So why not reverse engineer it? If you go out and you make your future compelling, let's say 5 years or 10 years into the future, and especially if you're a little bit more mature, this stops the idea of shutting down, I'm going to stop. So you go out and you create a compelling future, right? And add that future in every aspect of your life, not just your business. What about your personal life? What about your physical life? You're working out, Diamond Diller is still doing his, 20-mile bike rides a day, if not more, whatever it happens to be. So your relationships, every aspect of it, and make it big, make it almost unbelievable, right? So you create that compelling future, right? And then think about, to create that compelling future, what relationships do you have to have, right? We always use that analogy, and it seems to be true that you seem to be a sum total of the people you hang out with the most, because the people you hang out with the most will also influence what kind of data you're downloading, right? So what kind of data are you downloading that may be hindering your growth, right? Because when you look at, they say, Bruce is a good businessman, right? That 80% of your profits come from 20% of your clients, right? This seems to be true across a lot of industries, right? And 80% of the results are done by 20% of the employees in the company. I mean, there's some stuff, right? So what that means is, if this is true, right, then that means on the flip side, 80% of the crap you do isn't really helping you get to where you want to go. Right? So maybe you need to, it's not what you add. We always want to add a new seminar. I'm going to pitch you guys stuff, but I'm going to add a new seminar. I'm going to add a new technique. I'm going to add a skill set. That's always good. But what if it's also, what if you take away some of the stuff that's holding you back from getting it? Right? When the Pope asked Michelangelo about the brilliance of when he created David, how did he do it? And he said he just removed everything that wasn't David. Right? He didn't add, he took away. That's how we got the beautiful thing. So maybe in your life right now, maybe you're not getting to where you want to go, you know, and it's not just focus on the 20% of your clients that are making you money, but what are activities that you could cut away? You know, this is a personal challenge to me because I've been, you know, I need to wean off some of the crap I'm doing, right? You know, develop like, okay, I'm going to go on Facebook. All I'm going to do is post 3 things. Instagram, post 3 things. Or whatever it is, you know, make my videos and spend more time doing the stuff that will get me the results, right? What seems to get me the results. I need to make more videos and put them on YouTube. I need to redo my YouTube account, right? Right, because YouTube's is, you know, someone pointed out to me, YouTube's attached to Google. And if people are doing a search, if you got a lot of videos on the topic, they like videos first. They'll send if you Google it, they want to keep you in the Google realm, which is YouTube, right? And then you do Facebook, you put the same video up on Facebook, right? But then you kind of tease it on Instagram because Facebook wants to keep you in that world. So you could do both, and you could do it with the same video, right? So peel away the stuff that's not helping you get there, right? And then ask yourself about this future, what key experiences would you like to have? Because you judge life not by metrics necessarily. You seem to emotionally judge life by the experiences that you had. You know, you'll always remember the highly charged emotional events first, right? Because the rest of the time our lives will blend together, right? I could imagine we could ask Captain Schilling if we wanted to, you know, of all the years he spent I would say at sea, it would be under the sea for him, right? The days blend together. You know, it's the same shit, same crew, you know, for whatever deployment. But I'll bet you there were some highly charged emotional moments in those cruises that he could remember, right? And that's what's going to stand out. And that's the learning experiences, right? So why not structurally do this? What key experiences do you want to have in the future, right? Right? And let's say, you know, in a few years, right? And it's also easier if you're going to do creative visualization. It's easy to visualize the key experiences than some esoteric outcome. You know, when they look at the one that a lot of people point to for creative visualization is like Olympic athletes, and they visualize winning the race, winning the medal, and what that will feel like, right? And then, most of them in their past, they've won in the past, so they know how good it feels, whether it's in high school or college, so they could just take it to the next level and visualize what will it be like standing on the podium, right? Right, and because your brain can do that, right? So you imagine these key experiences, and then let's say if you want to add in now to tag it into business, maybe, you know, closing some big sales, right? And then also let's say you up your business, what would upping your business allow you to get in that key experiences? Buying the new house, buying the new car, right? Getting a hold of Diamond Diller and saying, you know, I want a 3-carat pinky ring. Captain Schilling calls, and, you know, so you could do Captain Eve. Yeah. So what key experiences, right? What will getting this give you the ability to do key experiences? Especially I've noticed in people that are coaches, hypnotists, NLPers that lean toward the metaphysical side, right? That's what the disconnect seems to be. You know, it's like, well, money's money, but skip the money. What would the money allow you to do? And then step into imagine that, right? And it's also why some of us can't model certain really good marketers, because, you know, some of the really good marketers are the, you know, greed is good kind of mentality. And maybe you don't want to do that, right? So now you have that. But then what if you do some magic and ask yourself, what if I could create this thing, say that's you're thinking 5 years in the future? What if I do that, you know, in 6 to 12 months? Right? In 6 to 12 months. Right? And then it can speed up the thing, right? Because time flows differently for different people. Right? And depending on what you're doing in your life, you've had times where times flew, you had times where times drag, right? But if you get caught up in a project, time can fly, right? And that, which goes into, you know, then what kind of projects, right, do I need to start to do to help me get there, right? And then when you look at all this, then you begin to think about, you know, what kind of character or what changes in my character or personality do I need to change or alter? It's going to change anyway. You know, it helps me. It's like, okay, you could make these changes and be the person you want to be if you picture out a few years in the future and make it happen quicker. Or you could choose not to, and then you're going to be in the future and not have the goal, right? I remember kind of a weird experience I had with this. I was taking karate when I got back into karate. And one of the guys I was friends with, right, in recovery, but he was an attorney, and he would watch the karate class because it was at the health club. And I think I got back into it and I was a purple belt. And he goes, I said, well, you ought to take it. You look like, he goes, yeah, you know, but it's going to take me like 3 years to get that brown belt and black belt. I'm like, yeah, probably. I mean, there's some, yeah, you know, yeah. And he goes, you know, whatever he said, but I'm like, well, that's under the assumption 3 years from now, you won't look back on today and be wondering why I didn't start. Right? Sometimes you just gotta, you know, strap up and get into it, right? So what kind of personality changes do I need to do? Right? And then you take this future you, the future you, and begin to look at who you are now, and even link back to your past, right? And then do some of the acting things. What from my past can I use to get to where I want to go? Right? You all take classes, you're all successful at that, you're good at helping people change. You know, most people on the call, so you're good at helping people change, you're good at motivating people. You have that in your past, right? So you can keep that and bring it down. You have it in your now, and it'll only be amplified in the future, right? And so what's your objective, right? Maybe you get a clear-cut objective of being the better business person, salesperson, because what experiences will that allow you to have, right? Not just to build a big business, that would be okay if that's your goal, but what would doing that do for you, right? To use our NLP, what would that do for you? What else would it do for you? What else would it do for you, right? And, you know, what kind of relationships do I need in my life to help me get there? And are there any relationships I need to cut away? And activities that is not getting me to where I want to go. Right? And again, I always, you know, the two things I always default to now seems to be acting in the theatrical world and the recovery world, right? If people really want to, at least my model of the world, you may have to let go of a lot of people, places, and things from your past if you want to be clean and sober now and into the future, right? So if you want to be a better business person, a better salesperson in the future, maybe there's some people in your, past that, or they're in your present that you need to let go of, right? They will, pull you back, right? Pull you back. So, and be okay with that, because I think what we get stuck at, not to bore you with it, but I think what we get stuck at in our heads, we start worrying about the people from our past judging us, right? Even if they're not in your past, even if they're not much in your life anymore, right? They may be gone. Your parents may have transitioned, but you worry about, wow, what would my mom or dad think of this, right? I don't know, right? And would it be helpful to me, right? Because again, to do our pathway thinking, if you get a strong enough why, you'll figure out the how, right? And then when you develop this, you develop the new character, right? Let me tie this in. I swear this will be it. Then we'll talk. Let's tie it into a basic NLP technique, not a technique, an idea, right? And how we can use it, right? To make changes. And it's one of the most overlooked ones. In fact, I overlook it, to be honest with you. So I'm starting to look at it again, right? One of the interesting things about doing this kind of stuff, when I have to do the research to create a new thing or a class or what I'm working on, I still think most of my research is me search. It's stuff I need to implement in my life, right? And do that, right? Well, let's use our idea of, and it ties into method acting, right? Which is logical levels. What is your environment? Where are you? Right? That's one of our logical levels. Every part of your environment, where you live, who you work with, the friends you hang out with, the places you go, and the people you do. Does your environment support what you want to do, right? And then above that, you have your behaviors, right? So does your behaviors support what you want to do? And are your behaviors influenced by your environment? Yes. Most of you act differently in a church or a business meeting than you probably would if you were at a Super Bowl party, right? So yeah, your environment. So maybe if you change your environment, your behaviors change. That's what we teach in the addiction world all the time. If you're at the AA meeting, it's a lot less likely to drink than if you went to the bar, right? You want to get in shape, it's probably better to be in the environment where people are getting in shape. A health club, a yoga studio, someplace where people are physically active, right? And this is where I used to clash with my clients. They go, I'll work out at home. I go, no, the fuck you won't. If you haven't to this point in your life, you're probably not going to start now, right? How many people do you know, and I've had this, you have a treadmill that is a great pant hanger, right? Or that elliptical, you can hang 2 jackets on because it has these things, right? The weights sit in the corner. Now, if maybe you were the type that worked out at home years ago, you might do it, right? But if you go to a health club, a gym, if I want to study karate, that's what I'm yelling at myself about. I need to find another dojo. I'll put on a video and start doing a kata, and the next thing you know, I'm watching a different video. Oh, this looks more fun. I'll sit there and watch something else, right? So your environment will change your behavior. And if you change your behavior, maybe they don't want you in that environment. You become very successful. There are probably people from your past or in your present that won't want you around. Right? Great. Right? And then maybe you need new skills. Right? Because if you get a new skill, that may change your behavior, which will help you change your environment. Right? So it's kind of interesting, right? And maybe you already have the skills. You might want to need new skills. But then this leads to beliefs, right? Do you believe you can do it? Do you believe you're worth it? Is it possible? And I've heard hypnotists, I do it, I think we've all done it. I've heard hypnotists in one hand say, anything is possible, except this. You know, anything is possible, except I really can't lose weight. Because I got a torn Achilles, blown out knee, which is throwing my hips out. Yeah, it's possible if I put down the fork, step away from the plate, move your fat ass. I mean, that's my motivation, right? So yeah. So what is it? What are your beliefs? And again, if you're creating a new character, what are their beliefs? Right? And again, when you look at a really good actor and they do a really cool character, sometimes they'll talk about, I remember Anthony Hopkins, when they were saying about, how did you do that character and make it so believable? And he goes, well, fundamentally, he was doing nothing wrong. Right? And we say that's a big leap, but everyone here is a villain in someone's story. Right? And it depends who's telling the story. Right? I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time is The Wrath of Khan, with two over-the-top actors, William Shatner and Rocco Montalban, right? And when you really step back, right, each one thought the other was a bad guy. They're both right. Okay? As we all know, history's written by the winner. Right? So in your own story, what are your beliefs? Can you do it? Is it okay to make successful, to do the things you want to do, right? And then this creates your identity, your ID, your personality. Right? Most of us here, at least at one point in our life, we had a personality shift. Right? When you went into adolescence is a natural one. When you became an adult, right? When you became a parent, you had children, that's a big person. That's your identity shifts. You're a parent now, you're a dad, you're a mom, right? You get a different job, right? When Billy Schilling, I would postulate from my viewpoint, when he took command of his first sub, he had to become a slightly different person than even as he was his XO. Because now it's his ship, right? They'll scuttle his career, even if something bad happens and he's not on the boat. You see that, it's like, you didn't train your crew right? And not everybody is prepared for this, but your personality can change, your identity, right? And again, if this changes, this will make natural changes down here. I think it's your behaviors in your environment, right? And then at the end of it, now imagine from this future you that we were talking about, future you. What if you asked that future you to look back at who you are right now and ask, for the current you to dare to dream to become this big 10 times thinking. Right? All right. See, I actually had notes. I did research. All right. I worked too hard. But it gave me something to do. My play's over, so I got to put something to do. So, all right.
You work hard, but you have too much fun too.
All right. So that is a little bit about how you can take acting and just create a new part of your personality. Because sometimes you hear actors say, I'll kind of wrap it up with this. Maybe you've heard it. If not, you can look it up. Every once in a while, an actor will say they've done a role that changed who they are. Right? hopefully, Anthony Hopkins isn't living in LA, eating human liver with fava beans. But but generally, you might do a little roll. It changes your perspective. It does this, especially the actors that aren't just personality actors. Right? And so then if you make that change, the lines that you might have trouble saying today, like closing a sale, telling people you're the best in the world at what you do, whatever it happens to be, will become more natural. Right? Because again, if you're going to model some of the top people, I'm pretty sure if you ask Tony Robbins who the best coach on the face of the earth is, he's not going to hesitate in giving you an answer.
Okay.
True.
I would postulate that. I don't know if it's true.
It
He would
starts
probably
with
say
the-
himself or one of his disciples. So, in fact, there's a story I heard. I don't know if it's true, but they said one of the other reasons Tony Robbins changed the name of what he was doing from NLP to neurosociative conditioning. Some of it had to do with they hadn't adjudicated out that it was public domain. But the biggest part, he was talking about something at a big group. And there were this was before he got to the level he's at now, obviously. And they were saying, well, Tony, who trained you? And he went, well, I went to these trainings with Richard Bandler and John Grinder and a couple other people. He goes, why you ask? He goes, because I'm going to go to them.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, pretty much at that point, he changed how he talked about it. Right? So anyway, any comments? No? I talked a long time.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yes, thank you. This is really interesting. What it sparks in me a question when you're working with a client and they say to you, I can't imagine, or I can't see it, or I can't feel it. Do you think they're holding themselves back? They're like self-sabotaging unconsciously?
And consciously, I would say.
And consciously?
And I know, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
To break through that, often we'll say, well, if you did know what would it look like? If you did know, use your imagination. And I think when they really fight it, they're afraid of getting there. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what if you did the other way? Say, yeah, I can imagine that, but can you think about the girl you were right before you got married? Carolyn, can you think of that? The lady you
Sure.
were right before you got
Yeah.
married?
I remember, yeah.
Could that you imagine who you are today?
No, never.
Oh, so your brain knows how to do it.
Nah, that's great. Okay.
You
That's a huge help. Thank you. Yeah.
So I got to ask Billy. Billy. Well, you're going to have to unmute because I want to hear your answer.
We're still recording.
Right? Did you change when you assumed command? A little bit. When you got the 3, you were whatever it was when you were the command, you were the commander.
Just to answer generally, since you're still recording, there's no doubt that most military officers across the board, I would say it's guaranteed that, and whether it's Army, Navy, Air Force, that with every promotion you get, especially once you reach mid-grade, and for the major, for the Navy, it's lieutenant commander, then you become a commander, then when you hopefully become a captain. That's as far as I can speak of from personal experience. There are definite changes in how you are perceived by others, and you respond in kind. some people may have preconceived notions, and especially if they're going to take command of some unit, as you pointed out, as especially in the Navy, as an XO and as a CO, those are different roles. Most commonly, in my era, because I'm talking about a Navy that doesn't exist anymore. When I joined the Navy, and you mentioned submarine service, we had periscopes that were actually a tube that went through a penetration in the hull. With the Virginia class submarine, that went away. We now have cameras on a mast, and everything is done now through what's called the photonics mast, and you get through a coupling, a fiber optic coupling through the hull, all the information, not only from the visual spectrum, but infrared and other spectra. Just leave it at that. So things have changed quite a bit, but in my era, it was not uncommon for the executive officer to be real hard-nosed, so that they would be the bad cop, and then the CO could be the good cop. But there were a few people, because of their personality and just because they made it to be a submarine captain, I'm speaking from my time in the submarine fleet, that there was no smarter beast on earth, and they could do no wrong, and they were absolute screamers. They generally had problems with their command. In fact, one of them, I won't mention the ship, but they actually hit a submerged seamount, ran aground, because they were just an absolute screamer, and everybody was afraid to do their job and report whenever things weren't going quite right. In this case, they were going very close to what we knew to be submarine geographic obstructions in a certain body of water. But you're still recording, and I probably will limit any more
Okay.
comments there.
All right. Did that make sense? Go ahead.
And I apologize if I'm regaling you all with sea stories.
We love it.
We love it.
Our
Yeah.
favorite time.
Tell us another story.
Don't let
Yes.
him lie to you. He was instrumental in the hunt for Red October.
I love it.
So, all right. So I'm about to turn the recording on. Did that make sense though, about like how actors approach things and how we should do that, right? And again, we tell our clients just sometimes act as if, but do you tell them how to act as if?
No, that's
No,
You
That
know,
is-
without
and-
that experience, it's hard to do that.
Right, right. And in the recovery, that's my big fight with people that don't understand the benefit of what Alcoholics or Narcotics Anonymous does. I know a lot of people have problems with other things, but the fact you tell some guy that grew up in an alcoholic family, everybody's drinking, he's a construction worker, his life is at the bar, quit drinking, just act as if. Where, you know, and then you get around the recovery world, there's models. You know, it's not just, you know, as they say in that world, it's not just putting the drink down, it's reinventing who you are. Right?
That's
You have to
the
be a
hard part.
different person, you know. My favorite saying in the recovery world, very few people use anymore, which is the same man drinks again. Right? You have to be a different person. Right? So you got to be different. You know. So anyway, let me stop the recording. So if you have any questions, shoot me a text, an email, somehow contact me, make a comment. If you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube, click like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.